the heyday of fucking Mark Maron, you'd be like, all right, fuck buddies, I'm gonna fuck you. What was that? What the fuck buddies? Here, let me sit on something. I'm gonna sit on a fucking brick like a little child. Um, what the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? All that shit. Um, this is not the most comfortable, but it is the most effective. So, yeah, we here now. So, as far as some stuff that I wanted to cover on stream, I don't know that if I'm gonna do the most effective stream right now, but I still wanted to show up and maybe address a few things here and there. One of the things, so I've been talking about and thinking about doing another stream with my friend Josh Jack, because one, for old time's sake, right? It would be amazing. How do I get rid of these visuals? Anyway, for old time's sake, but also because I think that authenticity and humanity, those are big words. Like humanity, that's a pretty fucking bold. Wait, what did I hit? No. Okay, there we go. Humanity, right? That's a big, gigantic word. Possibly too big of a term to even really use for a live stream. But the reason I bring it up is because when I'm doing a live stream with somebody I know, somebody I trust, like Josh. Oh, is this camera good? So I'm kind of tinkering around as I do this. Beauty light. All right, we'll do this for now. Anyway, let's get to the point here. So, when I'm doing things where I want to deal with people who are humane and human, talking to people like Josh Jack, it lends itself a little better to that type of thing, because I know, for one thing, I know him in person. I know him from the real world, um, the comedy world. It's a so it's like it's kind of a heightened version of the regular world, where telling dick jokes and saying wild shit, but it's the real world, you know? It's not the internet. I think a lot of shit happens on the internet that people just excuse because, well, it's the internet. So it didn't really, if I said a death threat, or I told somebody that they were worthless and made them want to commit suicide, it's just internet talk. What are you, triggered? What do you get in your fifis? You know, shit like that. So there's no accountability, no expectation for people to actually be human beings. If they're just terminally online all the time. And I think even well-meaning people can kind of lose themselves sometimes in this illusion of fakeness on the internet. Because the truth is, people say, even Dave Chappelle said Twitter is not a real place. And yes, in a sense, he's right. It's a fucking website. It's a bunch of servers somewhere. It's not like a place you walk into or anything like that. Um, but on the other end of every computer is a human being. And so people who want to not be accountable for anything they say conveniently will let themselves forget that yeah, there's actual people who may be affected by their words, actions, behaviors. And there are levels to this, right? There are tiers of um, behavior that people will have. Sometimes people will, freak out and dox someone, share their personal information. Sometimes they will show up at their place of work or where they live, stalk them. Sometimes they will even find them and commit violence on them. These are the very extreme cases um, of internet behavior gone wild. People call that going real life. But internet behavior doesn't have to be that crazy. Like, it doesn't have to be that much of a wild kind of departure from normalcy to still have, cause problems. Um, I don't know why I avoid the term problematic because I feel like it's overused by a lot of people that I don't like. That's problematic. That's problematic. It is problematic, but I prefer to just say it's a problem. Nonetheless, let's not get pedantic, and I don't even know what pedantic means. It's just a word I hear people say. Let's not get caught up in the words. The point here is that people act in ways online that are not fair. They're not human. They're not normal. They're not reasonable. And they certainly are not ways to treat others. The whole idea of like treat others as you like to be treated, that whole thing just goes out the window with a lot of live streamers. Um, and don't get me wrong, there is a nice, good people that I know online who are not like that, who are good, seem to be fairly good people in my experience. Folks like Russell Cook, AOC, you know, um, Maddie from the other day, from the other episode, Lexi Lou, Cool Boy, Nancy, all these folks, they seem pretty damn nice, pretty reasonable, human. I guess that's the word I want to use. Human. Jeremy as well, Andy Cruz. These are all people that I feel like if I met them in real life, they would be, you know, fairly similar to how they are online. Even Rev, as wild and crazy as Rev has the reputation of being, I think if I went somewhere and skated with him a little bit, yeah, maybe people have these kind of heightened online personas, personas, um, that they play, David Walsh as well. All these people might have sort of their radio voice, their radio style, their internet style of behaving, but that's a different kind of thing than what I'm talking about with these terminally online psychos, right? So when you're doing a show or a live stream, um, you're gonna let loose. You're gonna, maybe explore parts of yourself that you don't explore on a day-to-day basis normally, um, in your life, and maybe you'll talk in a way that's more performative, you know? That's very much a possibility. People may have longer conversations on streams than they ever have in real life. The point is, though, this is to have a creative departure from oneself is not really a problem. In fact, it could probably be quite healthy to kind of to have an outlet for this kind of thing, to explore parts of yourself that perhaps regular people around the world um, don't necessarily want to hear. Let's say you like to tell one-liners, or you like to make jokes about dark shit, or let's say you like to talk about I don't know, philosophy or something that the regular day-to-day folks in your life don't actually want to talk to you about. Well, online is a great place to have these conversations. So, exploring yourself, talking about things that you don't necessarily talk about day to day, that's something that you can really do online. And I think that you can get a lot of good feedback that way. And I think that you can also just kind of get to know who you are as a person a little better that way. Even folks like Kenny TV, I enjoyed them. So if I'm not being clear, maybe I'm not being clear with what I'm saying. I think I'm, dancing around it a little bit, but I think I'm ultimately getting to my point here, which is to say that exploring yourself online can be quite a good thing. Maybe that's a weird way of putting it, exploring yourself, but expressing yourself. Rev, I think Rev was in the chat. Good to see you. Yeah, Rev was one example of someone who, live streams, personality based, let's, get it out there. But ultimately, even if you have the on screen, on air persona, you're not an absolute life destroyer, type of person who's, because here's what I'm talking about, right? So, people who want to talk shit, bust balls, that kind of thing, that's internet behavior. That. Let me rephrase that. That's not internet behavior. That's hangout behavior. That's human behavior. When I'm talking about this online, some people call it terminally online behavior. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about a more sociopathic form of this. Instead of, talking shit, making fun of one another in a playful, ribbing fashion, instead of that, it turns into repeated, just like verbal harassment in DMs repetitively to an extreme level, making photoshops of people. And I'm not saying photoshops of people are entirely off limits, but the way that some people, I think you can learn a lot about people. They say you can learn a lot about people by the company they keep. I think you can also learn a lot about people based on the targets that they choose for their harassment, bullying, etc. So I want to be clear. I'm not categorizing, as someone like Rev or David Walsh wants to talk shit bust balls. That's not what harassment is. And yes, what harassment is, or bullying, whatever you want to call it, is when somebody finds a person online who is vulnerable. Perhaps it's a mother of a child with special needs who's having a difficult time, a single mother of a child with special needs. Um, and somebody they see blood, they insult this person in a way that there's no fun to it, like a Comedy Central roast, or like a comedy club kind of roast. If Nick DiPaolo is trashing Patrice, or Patrice is trashing Jim Norton, or Jim Norton is going after Greg Giraldo, these are all friends. These are all people who are taking things in the spirit in which they're intended. Even Rich Voss, as much as a pounding as he got, he also gave it back, so it was fair. But these internet people, these internet disgusteries, these folks, they're different. They will, like I said, they will target people. Say, one example, like I said, a single mother of a child with developmental disabilities who's barely getting by in life, and they will just spam, just mean, just artless, mean shit, like photoshops of her in compromising positions. And it's just like, it's not, the goal here is not to raise the bar on what's funny and become like the next hilarious person. We're not talking about Last Comic Standing, or even Kill Tony, or even forget stand-up comedy, right? We're not talking about Red Bar, internet. We're not talking about Discord humor. Rather, we're not talking about like the O&A subreddit type of humor that was clever, or even things like Comedy Enforcement. We're talking about people who stoop so low that the only joy that they can get is when they can feel someone else experiencing pain. Now, you might think, oh, I'm just saying something trite and boring. But I really think most people that I associate with voluntarily, let me rephrase that. The people that there are people who I associate with not voluntarily, who just kind of show up in my kind of area of the internet. But those are not people I'm intending to hang out with, right? These are not people who I am trying to be around. In fact, there's quite a few people who I've made it very clear I'm not interested in talking to. The Ross Dogs of the world, the Catch and Feels of the world, folks who I just don't want anything to do with. They just come back, right? They keep coming back. They show up in my chat. I believe a few Busters episodes ago, Cosmic Cam showed up in the chat, and he was saying like, please do something to, let unblock Ross and Catch, let them in. And I talked it over with Russell, and for whatever reason at the time, I was a little more charitable and willing to, willing to turn another leaf, willing to, let things, air things out, understand things, right? Um, but then it didn't really go anywhere positive from there, right? So they were in the chat, and I don't remember what they said in the recent chat, but I do remember a few weeks before that they were in the chat and they were talking to, I think, to Jamie Limonade, just saying the same old hack shit that they always say. Just the same moo. They think it's like the funniest thing in the world to say moo to her. And so that's, remember earlier when I was talking about people who have no desire to actually be funny, they just want to hurt people. The whole hurt people phrase. That's something that yeah, I've come to, and it kind of feels like a cliche kind of phrase, but that's what it is. It's these people that for whatever reason had experiences in their life that made them very upset about God knows what. And instead of seeking to heal themselves, they just want to bring other people down to their level. Now, if I wanted to be charitable, I would say no, they're just trying to be funny, right? They're just trying to be funny, and Jamie just happens to be the person that they're making fun of. I would say, okay, you want to go that route, you want to be charitable, I'll give you that for I'll give you a nice 6 months to a year of doing that same moo thing, right? Moo, basically calling her a fat cow with that's what they're doing, right? And they yeah, they're calling her a big fat cow and mooing at her and everything, and it's like they try to minimize and be like, what, we're just making an animal sound. I don't know, if I oinked at somebody, the implication that they're a pig wouldn't be so flattering. um but the point is that yeah, so they'll do something like that, and then they'll pretend like, oh, this isn't, why would it bother anybody? Well, you're obviously, if it didn't, let's be clear, if it didn't bother her, you wouldn't keep doing it. It's like psychology 101, right? The whole point of antagonizing, the whole point of doing something to antagonize a person is that you see that it upsets them. Therefore, you keep doing it ad nauseum because it gives you a kind of a rush, a feeling of like, whoa, I'm doing some crazy stuff. What's up, Donna? Now, Donna, you're an example of a guy, this is just kind of a late night chat. You're an example of a guy, I would say, in live streaming, who never really, I wouldn't say you ever really took the low road. I think you typically took the high road, and you wanted to entertain, make people happy. The incurable optimist was even your kind of slogan. And of course, once in a while, we get in the weeds with people, but overall, I would say 99% of the time, you're just a guy who's here to entertain people, make them happy, you know? And I think that's good. When it comes to this other category of people that I'm talking about, Um, it's just very unfortunate the the path that they've gone down. These repeated attacks, these repeated attacks going after folks like Jamie, you know, it's not doing anything except feeding their feeling of um significance. I think that's a lot of what it is. I think a lot of the whole like I matter thing and I think we actually there's been I think actually Don, I think I was on your stream at one point. I was addressing some stuff. This goes back pretty far, but I was like being accused of doxing somebody because I posted something happened to have Ross's girlfriend in the image, and I did not know at the time that this was a big deal, that she was like a private person. I saw it the same as if myself or you or David Walsh was in a picture. I did not know that this was private material, and I took it down and I got rid of it, but that wasn't enough. That was not enough. Uh, you know, it was already too late. I was already declared like the worst guy on the planet, and people decided to have kind of a, just go after me. And it's like, at a certain point, it's like, what are we doing? If you see a guy make an honest mistake, own up to it, move on. Why are we like trying to have like a World War III on the internet? Like what are we trying to what need are we trying to fulfill by just trying to ruin someone's day? It starts with trying to ruin someone's day, then you get traction. Oh, maybe I can ruin their week. Maybe I can ruin their month, their year. Hey, maybe I can ruin this person's entire life. And this group, I mean, they started to root for entirely for my downfall, which it's like I don't know what, I don't know. I don't typically root for people to fall apart. But hey, I'm just a different kind of person. I guess there's different people out there, and some people would rather see people burn to the ground. But that's really what I'm trying to examine here is what is it about certain people that that they're actually proud. So I tried to talk to um I would say about a week ago, not even a week ago. I was in Alex's stream. I was in AOC's uh internet stream, podcast, live stream, etc. I don't remember what he called it. Brett, aka AOC, aka Brett P. And he was doing some kind of stream, and Jamie Limonade was there. Um, Helen DeKellar was there. Um, I was there, and Rostog was there, and they did this little weird thing, which is they tried to pit me against Helen. Now, I haven't seen Helen DeKellar in like I want to say a year and a half to 2 years, potentially even longer. And there was this weird thing where they're like, HB hates Helen because Helen is rich and happy. And are they just assuming? I mean, sure, I'm like, maybe I'm jealous on a certain level. I wish I want to lose weight, but this weird like pitting me against him, like I have any reason to hate the guy. I haven't talked to him, and this isn't even. This is gonna sound like a petty insult. I swear on my life, it's not. I haven't really thought about him in a year. Not because he sucks, but just because life happens. And in a sense, if you haven't made an extreme impression on me in live streaming, it probably is a good thing, because a lot of the people that I can't forget about, uh, I mean, there's folks like Don A and David Walsh and Russell Cook, who are very memorable for good reasons. But there's also other people who I remember very well for not so flattering reasons. The Kyle Uniques of the world. He's not the worst. Actually, now that no, I would say that's not fair to Kyle. Uh, uh, he's not the greatest guy, but he's not the worst guy either compared to. I would say he has fucked up. He has definitely made some huge mistakes. However, it's all by accident typically. Whereas a guy like Pot Awful, Jesse PS, his behavior is more of a conniving, intentional thing where he's seeking out people to hurt, to destroy, to ruin. So yeah, what I'm saying is, like, the reason I forgot about Helen, simply because there's too many fucking people in the world. So a mild-mannered, funny guy, just, my mind. Um, but Ross and Ketch, I think, were just desperate, for me to to have it be where I'm, that I hate Helen DeKellar for some reason. Like, oh, HB just hates him. He must hate Helen because Helen is everything that HB isn't, and that's got to drive him nuts. And again, it's like, do I want what he has? Sure. If we're talking about positive, if he has money and he's healthy, sure, I want that. But I don't think the path to getting there is to hate the guy. That's more of a Mark Maron approach to life. As much as I like Mark Maron, and he was a very genuine guy when I met him in person years ago at Helium, he seemed like a real dude. He also, unfortunately, is a very resentful guy, and he would always talk about when Louis C.K. got his special. All I saw was the name of the special to me was "Fuck You, Mark Maron." Or like when Jon Stewart succeeded, he thought the name of the Daily Show was "The Show That Mark Maron Doesn't Get to Have." Like, everything was about everyone else's success was seen as his failure, right? And that's not the way to be, and that's not the way to live. Um, Now, maybe for people it's easier said than done. Even for people who don't want to be resentful or hateful of people having more success than them, uh, it can be difficult to avoid that urge. I would say that, can I get jealous? Sure. But it doesn't result in me trying to ruin someone's livelihood. It doesn't result in me trying to tear apart their friendships or mess with their reputation online. And, reputation, right? Like, our reputation, that's not to say that, like, oh, the HB's reputation in the online world is like super serious. I'm not running $1 billion company. I'm not running $100 company. The point is, though, that I'm a human being and I'd rather not. It doesn't feel good, unless you're like totally like either a sociopath or you are super evolved, I guess. Evolved Zen. Unless you're one of those two things, if someone is going behind your back and lying about you, um, it can have an effect. It can affect, it can make you potentially trust other people less. It can, so make you paranoid. It can just make you in general just an angry person. And it can distract you from getting from doing creatively the things that you want to do. And I don't know if this is a strategy that is intentional by some people, if they just want to fuck you up so much and get this negative attention from you to totally derail your success. I don't know if that is always the case, but I do know that that is the case with this very specific group of people. So, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I have made attempts many times over the years, many times, to bury the hatchet with Ross and Ketch, to no avail. I tried to talk it out. I tried to, just be cool, hang out. But I always felt like it was only going in one direction. Which is to say, the remorse or the apologies were only coming from one side. Now, if I'm the only person in a conversation who's willing to apologize and show remorse, then I know something's wrong, because I'm not necessarily the quickest to apologize, and I'm not necessarily the quickest to see my own flaws. So if I'm reflecting and seeing my part in something quicker than the other person, then I know that the other person is either, one, incapable of reflecting, or two, absolutely unwilling to reflect. It's really only one of the two. Now, they can manifest in different ways, right? So, again, to get rid of the vagaries, I'm talking specifically, I'm kind of blending them into one person, Ross Dog and Catch and Feels. I'm blending them into one person because they kind of act at each other's behest. They're in a relationship. It's not that crazy. People often kind of get intertwined in that way. Now, I used to make the mistake of mixing up folks like Cosmic Cam and Belland um, and perhaps and Ian Ellis possibly as well. I would or Helen DeKellar rather. Um, and maybe that's actually why they thought I didn't like Helen DeKellar, is because I would get in fights with him back in the day. Now, the reason I would, and I was in the past, I said some unkind things to Helen. I mean stuff. Now it was never because I want to be very clear. Like he was caught in the crossfire in a sense. I never had this like it was never this big resentment like, oh, Helen's the worst. Helen's a piece of shit. Helen sucks. It was not that. What it was these folks' unwillingness to see that their guy, Ross, was wanted it both ways. Wanted to both be the victim and the perpetrator at the same time. Wanted to say, everybody's coming after me, treating me unfairly, while also doing all the shit that he was accusing other people of doing. You know, there's a common refrain from them over and over again where they would talk about how, HB, like the people on your side of the internet, they're just like really, they're sick, they're ill, they're just mentally unhealthy, you know? Um, us over here, we're totally normal. Like, we don't have any problems like you guys. And it's like, if only they really looked inward and saw that they acted entirely the same, or perhaps even worse. And in this analysis, what I'm trying to make clear is I'm not saying in any way that there aren't people who I associated with who turn out to be assholes, right? Who turn out to be unkind people. I just think it's weird that the folks over at RDA seem to think that that's a unique thing on my side of the internet, and seem to excuse it when their guy is going after people. One common example, Cosmic Cam. Cosmic Cam would say about me, actually, he would say, I don't like when HB goes after women. I'm worried that he's gonna like go around and he's gonna start trashing women and bullying women on the internet. And it's like I start thinking like, what is he talking about? I made like a diss track about Steph. Like other than that, what the hell? Maybe made like some light roast jokes about Jarva or like one of my friends. Like I don't know what he's talking about. Like bullying women, but if I were to flip things back, look at his pal Russ, how he's treated folks like Limonade, German Lady, Kimmy P, Brutally Lauren, Beck. Seems like there's a pattern. Dez, GLM. He's going after a lot of people who, I'm sorry, who's the other person? Fucking Hello Starlight. Like his pal Russ goes after like 10 different women on a regular basis. He doesn't notice any of that, even for a second. What he notices is I did a diss track a tongue-in-cheek diss track about their friend Steph. That's me bullying women. His incessant actual like harassment of a woman with a special needs child, his actual ongoing like 5 year long 5 to 8 year long obsession with Lemonade, with making disgusting photoshops of her, with saying things about her that are just there's no humor, there's hate. I know humor is subjective, right? So I'm not saying that in his head he's not trying to be funny. What I am saying is that whatever humor he has is laced with a lot of hatred. Because those things can go hand in hand, right? Like there's it can be like Don Rickles, like, oh, this guy looks like a queer going woo woo woo, like nonsensical bullshit ribbing that there's no hate in it because it's just fucking ridiculous. And on the other hand, if a joke is like, yeah, look at this fucking bitch, this stupid cunt. She looks like she probably is gonna fucking kill herself one day with her stupid smile. She probably has diabetes so bad that she already lost her left toe. She just doesn't realize it because she doesn't move. That stupid cunt. She should fucking die. Like, like the second example, there's like no art to it. There's no humor. There is humor to it in there somewhere. It's like Kevin Brennan style humor. So like Kevin Brennan can be funny, but he always shoots himself in the foot with all the shitty resentment and hate, that he surrounds all of his comedy with. But even Kevin Brennan is a shining example of amazing comedy compared to this. And let me be clear, I want to be clear. I'm 100% not saying that Ross and Catch cannot be funny. I'm not saying they're incapable. And maybe that's how I've gone about this wrong this entire time, by making it seem like, oh, they can never be funny. They don't have the capacity to be funny. I'm not saying they don't have the capacity to be funny. What I'm saying is that they don't have the willingness to be funny. They don't have the desire and the willingness to push aside the hatred and just light, funny jokes. Let's say this about Lemonade. Let's make this nasty Photoshop of Beck, or this. Let's take this unflattering, mean picture of Hello Starlight and Brutally Lauren. Let's just take the meanest, trashiest stuff we can. That you have to have no taste in the world to appreciate, and do it that way. And one of the things that they always do is they have this kind of like get out of jail free card. It's like they'll say, Howard Stern used to do this back in the day. Back in the day, Howard Stern would say, Wendy, you're a fucking retard, right? Like, that's stuff that makes me go, whoa, all right, calm down, But by the way, he didn't say that. He had yes, that was her name, but it wasn't just about, he didn't just dumb it down to the complete dumbest thing. But even then, my point is, Howard Stern is not the moral, the arbiter of what's moral and right in this world. Two, I think even Howard Stern would say, Howard Stern of today would say, yeah, some of the shit I did back in 92 was probably not the kindest, not the best thing to do, and I wouldn't do it today. And that's outside of, like, woke Howard, whatever. I'm saying, like, that even stuff that's not to do with like woke or edge. It's just there's just some stuff that is so heinous. Like, I don't think you'd be like, oh, people are so woke these days. They don't even want to say sexual, disgusting things to mentally disabled people. It's like, all right, that's not about woke. That's about having human decency. That's about not striving to be the worst person on the planet. So my point is, again, do I think that Ross has the ability to be funny? Yes. Yes. I just don't think he has the willingness to do it. I think that he is incredibly lazy, intellectually, comedically. And I always hear this thing from him and Catch and Fields. He's like, oh, people fucking write jokes. Like, people actually make an effort in their comedy. And it's like, I mean, yeah. I'm not saying I'm the fucking, I don't make enough of an effort, frankly. I don't make enough of an effort. If I did, I'd actually like be finding ways to get viewers, but and putting myself out there. But I strive to. I don't look at people who are people like Red Bar, people like even piece of shit Pot Awful. He's mean. He's an asshole. He's mean. I He does put a hell of a lot of effort into his shit. My issue with him, with Pot Awful, has less to do with the content of his comedy and more about the whole nature of the doxing and the real life, going real life with stuff. And I will say, like, that's the thing with these folks, with folks like Ross and Catch. They don't do, as far as I know, they don't go real life. And I'm glad for that, and I appreciate and applaud that. I still think that that also doesn't mean that anything short of going real life is entirely righteous, reasonable behavior. And when I say righteous, maybe that's a bad term to use, because I'm not saying you got to be the second coming of Christ, to be on a live stream. I'm not saying you got to be a goody two shoes. I'm just saying, maybe when a single mother who's struggling in her life is crying on stream and getting addicted to drugs, maybe that's not the time to, like, just pile on. There's something to be said for not just kicking someone when they're down. You can pick targets who deserve it. Pick a target. I respect people who find someone, like, all right, so, like, that's one example. For the longest time, I would go after Red Bar before I became a Red Bar super fan. Weird how that stuff changes over time. But for the longest time, I would go after him, and I justified it by saying that, he's huge, and he's not like, it's not like I'm punching down. It's not like I'm picking on a guy who's like, has nothing going on in his life or is having a difficult time. So I let myself do that for for like a few years, like 4 years. And then I realized it got to a certain point, and it's like, I don't care who the guy is that I'm going after. If you're going after a guy for 5 years, it's still like it's almost an abusive relationship at this point. Now, if you're doing it light and comedically and fun, that's different. But even I was looking at myself and I was like, what am I doing here? You know, I'm attacking this guy in ways that are less than artful, less than comedic. A lot of it seems resentful. And then on top of that, started to find out that he was getting very sick, very ill. Now that's not to say that that it was just a simple, easy thing where I was just like, oh, he's getting sick, so I'm just gonna lay off him. That was a piece to the puzzle. You know, I was like, okay, this guy's like physically ill, like he's got a disease now and he's like dying, which still I hope that's not the case. I hope he's getting better every day. But when I started to hear that, I was like, oh fuck, what am I doing? It is kind. Then it starts to become a punching down because you're going after a man who like if you I don't know the entirety of how the human you know how healing works and everything like that, but I do think that if you're the type of person who's always hearing things stressful when you're trying to get better, it's not going to help you. If every time if you're dying from a fucking mystery disease, it doesn't matter what the disease is. I mean, it does matter to him getting mental health. I'm just saying this could apply to any disease out there. If you're, laying in bed feeling like shit, and then my stupid face comes on the screen, and it's like, actually, Bar is fucking, you're a piece of shit, whatever. Even if I'm getting like 3 views, you might be like, do I really fucking need to hear it from this piece of shit right now? Do I really need to be getting this from this guy? So yeah, I was like, all right, I don't need to be doing this. And I actually, that was like maybe a third of the reason why. The other 2/3 of the reason why I stopped going after Red Bar was quite simply because in the process of watching his videos, to bust them, to go after them, to trash him, I started to less and less take notes, and more actually just like start watching him. I was just watching, and I was in awe of his ability to perform for a webcam, or whatever camera he has. You perform for his wife and the camera with a level of intensity and showmanship that is normally saved for, like an actual stage. Like, here's this guy, and that's the thing, like, it's the cool thing to a lot, I don't want to say these days because it's irrelevant. This has been the same thing for a long time among a certain group of people. The cool thing is to not try, right? But I actually felt that it was pretty cool the way that this guy was just like giving it's like he was playing to Madison Square Garden in his fucking bedroom. And yes, if that's done poorly, it's absolutely pathetic, right? But this man figured out a way to harness the energy of a live performance, something you would see on a stage among a large group of people. And he was able to just do that in front of a camera, using a variety of, clips that he's watching and stuff like that. And it really, it I said like that whole give it a year thing. Um, it took me it took me 5 years. Because here's the thing, right? I didn't give it a year. I never gave it a year with an open mind. I watched it I gave it a year with a closed mind, and I just like hated it, but that was about it, you know? I hated myself. I hated, I just like absolutely hated things. Um, and so I wasn't looking at it fairly. It's kind of like if you watch somebody stand up and, uh, and you're not like a fan of them, well, then what are you doing, right? Um, are you just watching it to pick at them, to pick at it? Are you like actually sincerely um dug into it, you know? And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of a weird thing. It's something that, so anyway, I got to a point where does this say I'm not, whoa, fuck. I just spilled water on myself. Sorry. See? Now you can be really engaged in the what am I sitting? Oh, okay. I hope I don't destroy the leather I'm sitting on. That would really fucking suck. But yeah, you can you can do things that quite creative. And so I was watching him for a long time, and I was watching him and watching him and watching to critique him, but eventually I just became a fan and I stopped going after him. So, that changed. So my hope really for folks like Ross Dog, Katzenfields, if they're actually interested in becoming reacquainted with, my group over here of folks, I think it's gonna take some time to it's gonna take some time for me to trust them. Similar to how Ian Ellis understandably was just kind of maybe lost his patience with me when I was going after his friend Rex for what I considered justifiable reasons, because he was kind of feeding into the whole lie about Ross Dog and Katchen, saying that I doxed his girlfriend with intent. And that was the main thing, right? You say I fucked up. Even Helen was like, all right, so you fucked up, right? You did fuck up. That's different than saying you intentionally fucked up and I know you did it on purpose. It's like, come on. If I messed up and I'm sorry, it doesn't mean you have to forgive me, but you shouldn't just like be ascribing this intent that's not there with no evidence and no real reason to believe it except what, you don't like me. It just so that was always the thing, right? That was it felt like a bandwagon. There was this desire to be on a bandwagon that they had. um this feeling that like that um whether it was Helen, again, I don't have any real issues with him outside of the fact that he fucking loves RDA and thinks they're like can do no wrong. That's my main criticism. That was my main criticism of Rex at the time. My criticism of Helen Keller, and that was my criticism of Cosmic. All folks who seem to just think that it was no big deal that their pal Ross could just treat people as shitty as he possibly wanted to, and that it didn't matter because, hey, it ain't me he's treating like shit. So, what do I care? You know? And I just felt like they were just willing to just sit by and let that happen. Because I would like to think that, myself, like with Russell, Sam Hill, me, Russell, Sam Hill, Cool Boy, Nancy, Jarva, we would all call each other out, and Bleach as well. We do all call each other out when we all fuck up. I mean, how long did I go after him for the whole telling him to apologize to Donna for years, right? Remember that? Donna. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like to think that we call each other out much more frequently than folks on the other side who's just like, oh, you gotta always stand up for the team. Like, it bothered me when Ross would be okay with Helen DeKeller porn bombing channels. I didn't like that he was okay with that, or not just okay, but like celebrated it, thought it was cool. And the fact that he thought it really comes back to one big thing, and it always bothered me the most about Ross was that the the fact that he lied to Wendy, said that I was saying mean things behind her back so that she would not